We're back. Welcome to another jam-packed edition of David Lee Madison's The End of the Night. Sadly, our co-host and co-producer Joe Ridgely's not available tonight. He's out stealing hubcaps, from what I understand. But the super lovely and the super talented J.W. Colwell is stepping in tonight. Hey, J.W., how are you?
How are you doing? It's not hubcaps, it's catalytic converters. We were discussing this earlier. He's moving up in the stealing business.
In the stealing industry.
Yeah, the stealing industry. We have all kinds of people that are doing it these days.
Yeah. How are you know doing? He'll be a presidential candidate.
Yes, possibly. How are you doing on this fine Sunday night?
I am doing awesome. You know what? I've been friends with our guest tonight, Megan Franich, on Facebook for several years now, and I've been following her career. And I only just got to speak to her face to face in the green room a few moments ago, and she is extraordinarily sweet. And I wasn't expecting such a wonderful British accent, so that was cool. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's definitely going to class up the show tonight. Like it's me, you, and Scott, and then somebody super cool and British.
Yes.
So it's like she balances it out.
We could use all the help we can get on this.
That's exactly right.
On this train wreck of a show, this car accident mess of a show. You know, there was a bit I used to do on the show, JW, and I thought I'd bring it back tonight. And it's looking back at some films that I really, really dig. That are either really, really not well known, or have been out of the limelight for a long time. And it doesn't matter if you've seen it or not. If you did and you've seen them, please, add
chime in.
On it. Yeah,
okay.
But this film, I think, is probably one of the scariest films of the last 25 years. It's not really spoken about in horror circles very much. I think it's a really great film, and it was called The Descent.
I've definitely seen this. So this is Neil Jordan. One of the great horror directors. Near the end, he did a movie called Dog Soldiers. He's also done
the werewolf
Descent.
Dog Soldiers. Yep.
And The Descent is a fantastic. Now, have you seen both endings? There's two endings to it.
Yes, I saw both endings.
There's a European ending, and then there's an American ending because we can't have anything quite so depressing.
Yeah, we need
happy.
I mean,
as happy as you can get fighting cannibalistic
cave dwellers.
Yeah. As happy as you can get. It's got to be super happy if it's going to release in America. But I love that movie. It's underrated, highly underrated.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot of talk about The Descent. It kind of just came out, and when it came out, it got a lot of love. People thought it was a cool flick, but it was kind of swept under the carpet because I think people like his Dog Soldiers a lot better. I like Dog Soldiers, and I know you love Dog Soldiers, so please don't take this as. Well,
it's not.
I think The Descent's a much better crafted and a better movie than Dog Soldiers.
Oh, I think it is. I think Dog Soldiers is a way to get in to Neil Jordan, and then you can see his other work. He also did a lot of work on Game of Thrones, and so like these movies that he made in the early 2000s and aughts and 90s got him into directing circles where he's directing a lot of, like, you may not notice, he's directing a lot of the TV shows and stuff where he pops in and directs an episode or two. He's directed some of the biggest Game of Thrones episodes ever, including one of the Battles of Bays, which is one of the big Peter Dinklage episodes. So
did he direct the infamous Poland Spring episode?
No, he didn't have anything to do with Starbucks or Poland Springs
Spring?
because he's an actual director.
How the hell did that happen?
I don't know, but I think it's becoming like a game now to see if people can get it on. But The Descent always scared me, not necessarily. For me, The Descent is always scary because of not necessarily the monsters. The monsters are scary, but what other people do to other people.
No, absolutely. And the movie has an extraordinarily claustrophobic feeling to it.
Oh my God, I can't.
If you watch that movie in your house in complete darkness, you get up every once in a while and you stretch
just to make sure that you can move around.
Just
still.
To make sure, everything's still good.
That first sequence also is probably some of the best horror sequences ever. Where they're in the dark, it's pitch black, and she makes a turn. They do a full turn with the camera, and the monster's standing right behind her, can't see, and it's just like, oof, Jesus.
Yep.
That's like, it's nightmare inducing.
And it's one of those films that is super dark. And when I say dark, I don't mean dark in the way in its feeling. I mean dark, literally visually dark. And sometimes you lose stuff in visually dark horror films, but not in this one. Somehow they made it all work perfectly.
Well, yeah, the rub right now in Hollywood is they're doing a lot of dark stuff, but it's not. You can't see things, right, as opposed to this movie that shot a lot cinematography wise in the dark. But everything is perfectly. There's a perfect gleam on it when you're watching it. It's a terrifying movie. It's great.
Oh, I agree with you. Now, my next film. This was a real out of the dark. I don't think anybody knows about this movie, but it was a Bruce Campbell film called The Woods.
I think I've seen it, but I don't remember it.
Okay.
But I think I remember it, but I don't remember.
It's about girls who go to an all-girls Catholic school who are slowly being picked off and murdered. And, and Bruce Campbell's in it. And it's really, really, it's kind of like hipply funny, yet darkly just, it's like, imagine if Wednesday, the Netflix TV show, was good. It's kind of like that. But, but
it's a hard sell. Oh. She's really good. You can pick on the show. The show has flaws, but Ortega's really good.
She's good. But
she's not Christina Ricci good, but she's good.
She's good, but I don't know. You're just starting to hear a lot of negative things about somebody so young, as far as how they. Oh,
I did not know that. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, so I'm starting to not be as big a fan. Now this movie everybody knows, and I'm sure you're going to talk about it at length because I'm sure you're an enormous fan of this film, but I haven't. What are you laughing at?
Because you're lumping me in. What if I'm not that big a film nerd? No, I am. Go ahead, do it.
No.
Just do what you're gonna do.
You are definitely a big enough film nerd to know this movie. It's like, what if I pull out Star Wars? Are you gonna be like, I don't know that one.
I don't know that one.
I don't know
what. I don't know what you're talking about.
Like if you started talking about Godfather, I'd be like, oh, okay.
I heard that in last week's show, and I'm like, I put in the comments last week. I would fight with somebody about, because Godfather, I think you're right. It's not as great as everybody thinks it is, but Godfather Part 2 really is great.
Right. No, and I honestly believe that, thousands of people can't. Well, I guess thousands of people can be wrong. They like Star Wars. But with that being said, the next movie is one of my favorite movies when I was a teen. And in fact, in some of my films, I actually, Mr. Hush takes place in Lumberton. So you know what movie I'm talking about already.
Yes. Go ahead.
This little ditty, Blue Velvet, with Kyle MacLachlan and Isabella Rossellini, directed by the great David Lynch. Oh gosh, that scene! I'm having a brain fart. I was gonna say James Woods, but it's not James Woods.
It's not. No, it's Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper.
Blue Velvet is fantastic. Like really good. The degradation of small town society. And just like what's creeping behind those closed doors, and in every small town that, especially in the Northeast, you never know what's lurking. And in this particular case, it's Isabella Rossellini and Dennis Hopper with like a mask and just crazy.
You
and
have
just
no idea
creepy.
What is he snorting? Ready?
I think it's oxygen or Whippets. Okay. Isn't it Whippets or oxygen?
I
always thought it was.
The worst drug I ever did was Entenmann's, my friend. But
same for me. But I think it's oxygen. I think it's pure oxygen or something like where it's the kind of weird thing you would get in like a Gwyneth Paltrow Goop catalog. You know what I mean? Like,
and you know what's so weird, what's so great about that movie is that Kyle MacLachlan plays every kid, but yet every kid in a really, really weird kind of creepy way.
Yeah, it's him and Spader, right? If you need a weird teen from the 80s and 90s.
It was Spader. Yep.
Yeah, Spader.
Well, Christian Slater.
Slater did too. Yeah, he had like pump up the volume and, you know.
He was good in the Tales from the Crypt movie too. He was like the only good part of that movie.
Yeah, good point.
And
Great
Heathers,
point.
Don't forget Heathers.
Well, nobody can forget Heathers.
No,
we've been trying to copy Heathers for the last 20 years, and in teen thrillers, we've never gotten past Heathers. You know what I mean?
Well, we could sit and bore the hell out of our folks watching us tonight with our silly, but those are 3 flicks.
We have a guest, and we have Scott waiting in the wings.
We do. If you get a chance to check out those 3 flicks, they all have their merits in their own right. So check them out when you get a chance. With that being said, JW is the lovely and talented our partner in crime, our co-host Grunkle. Scott, ready?
He is definitely ready. Are you ready for him?
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Grunkle Scott Schiaffo.
Hey!
How the hell are you?
I'm good. How are you gentlemen doing?
I am doing well.
Doing great. Hanging out on a Sunday with smart people. And we're getting a classy British person later.
Really?
So
Is she
a
Brit or is she Australian?
Oh, I don't know now. Now you made me worried.
This is going to have to be this is going to have to be the very, very first question we ask.
She's from New Zealand.
Oh, she's not a Brit. Oh, but it's still a classy accent.
Right.
It's still cool. She still sounds cooler than the 3 of us.
Well, that's not very hard.
There's an air of class to it. It doesn't, you know.
Mr. Schiaffo, how the hell are you? You got anything cooking? Anything news? Anything big, dramatic? Anything?
Not particularly, just gearing up, getting ready for a couple of shows coming up, one next month and one after that. I was enjoying the conversation you guys were having about certain actors in films. Let's not forget Christian Slater in True Romance.
Oh, yes. He was great in that movie.
Oh, man.
You know what's funny? Christian Slater literally was an A-list superstar. And nothing like that he specifically did took him from that mantle. And it's his career is very strange, if you ask me.
Well, I mean, he did have a good chunk of time where he got into the substance abuse and arrested at the airport with a gun. And
oh, did he?
Oh, he had a dark period there in the 90s for a while. He had a couple of relationships where he was accused of violence. But he bounced back from that. But I agree. I thought he would have been probably a bigger. But out of his generation, he's one of the better character actors for sure.
Yep. And apparently, JW just like he disappeared. JW, come back to us.
Hold on. I'm fixing things, producing wise. Sorry, just fixing some stuff.
It's like 3-card Monty or that 3-card.
Yeah, I don't know if you pick which pictures underneath. It's
which one is
it's going to have the winning hand.
Which one has the little corner bent on the?
That's exactly right. Got to make sure you're careful at the Port Authority.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, we have a super lovely and a super talented guest joining us tonight. Let's all welcome a woman who's been in several motion pictures and just a really lovely human being, and I can't wait to have her on. Let's bring on Megan Franich.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
How are
so
you?
Sorry we got the British accent
I'm
wrong.
from New Zealand.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It was making me chuckle in the background.
It just sounds classy.
That's why Scott gets paid the big bucks, because he does all this homework and is just a smart guy. How are you, Megan?
I'm good. I'm really enjoying the movies that you guys are all bringing up. A True Romance was actually the first movie my husband and I ever watched together. And we've just recently been saying we need to watch it again and just sort of...
That's so romantic of your husband.
Did you see it on
David
DVD?
Lynch is my favorite director. I just love his stuff. I love movies that do something unexpected, that make me guess and that I can't predict what's going to happen. That really gets me excited. And the one that you mentioned, so I went to a Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
So the movie you were talking about where the Catholic schoolgirls get picked off one by one, that sounded like a feel-good, heartwarming.
Yeah, it sounded like a Tuesday where I come from.
Just gotta hope it's the nuns and not one of the other schoolgirls.
There you go.
I would happily have taken that also.
So Megan, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a young girl and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life. What made you move in the direction of working, as a performer?
Gosh, that's so sweet of you to say. No, I've done my youth. I'm on to full mom mode now. I initially started out as a sound engineer. So I was working in a studio. I did not have any aspirations for acting at all. And I was doing post-production audio for a film one day. And the director just liked my look. I had these big blonde dreadlocks and looked like a little scruffy grunge kitten. He was like, I want you in my next movie. I was like, okay. I had no idea what, that meant. And I really enjoyed it. But even then I didn't sort of go, okay, that's going to be a career change. This is what I'm doing now. It still took a while. That was in New Zealand. And then I moved to Australia for a while and I was still doing sound there for a year or so. And then moved back to New Zealand and thought, I moved to Auckland and I didn't have a job yet. So I was like, I may as well join an agency and just see what happens. And I wound up getting jobs here and there and really enjoying it. And then I wound up eventually getting a bunch of American stuff in New Zealand. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Maybe I should move to America. And then I got this commercial for a New Zealand beer. And I was like, oh, okay. New Zealand does like me. Okay. And then the production was like, oh, so this is only playing in America because we're taking this New Zealand beer to America. I was like, okay. I'm listening, universe.
The universe is telling you to move to America.
Yes. My favorite professional wrestler is from New Zealand. Can you guess who it is?
I cannot.
Bushwhacker? Are you a bushwhacker person?
No. I thought you would get this, JW. Tony Garea.
Tony Garea. Okay. Well, you're right, because it's on the tip of my tongue.
He's an Auckland, New Zealand guy.
Interesting.
Megan's like, why the hell are we talking about Tony Garea in my interview?
Well, funny, my kids have just done a movie about wrestling.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah. It's called The Iron Claw.
Mm-hmm.
And the Von Erichs.
Yes. So wait, your kids are working with MJF and all the people that are working, Zac Efron, everybody's working on this movie?
Yeah, so they played Zac Efron and Lily James's kids.
That's super cool.
Yeah, their first movie.
Wow, the Von Erich story. That's amazing. It's a big movie coming out. There's a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah, it was. They had a good time.
Yeah, keep him away from MJF though. That guy's a bad guy.
I don't know who that is. Who is?
He's one of the rising superstars in American wrestling. He works for AEW, but he plays a heel in real life, and he's a heel in wrestling. So he's a bad guy, but he's like, he doesn't take the persona out of it. He's always the bad guy. He's never doesn't sign autographs, mean to kids. Like,
oh no,
he's a proper heel. He's good. He's really good at his job.
We weren't around any of the wrestling scenes. Actually, they were just like all of the home stuff, the family stuff.
So we do have some comments. I am going to chime in here. Joe says, hi Megan. Welcome to the network.
Hi.
Says, hi Megan. Joe says, hi Megan. So happy to have you on the network. Joe says, glad to see Scott's guitar back. Yeah, he is out stealing catalytic converters. We weren't joking about that. Michael Tamanya, like Garea. Good evening, all. Megan. Interesting conversation. Megan, what about you were a goblin for Disney?
Yeah.
Goblin and a nymph for
Yeah.
Disney. Super cool.
I loved it. I don't know, I love body work. Interesting when you can do interesting, weird things that humans don't do. I just love it. Like, my idol is Doug Jones, like someone who's just a creature actor. And it was fun. Like, it was kind of spoiled me a little bit for movies because it just had such a high budget, and like we were,
Catering was nice.
in like a ski chalet on the mountains, like looking down on clouds, lightning storms happening below us, and we'd get choppered into set, and like it was the most amazing experience.
So she's talking about The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe as one of her screen credits.
Sweet.
She got to play a goblin
And it was so fun to play, both the goodie and the baddie. So to get to be in both camps and see the different ways, like the brightness of all of the Paravel scenes and stuff like that, and then how they made like the creepy sort of forest scenes of the evil witches camp and stuff with all the mist and I don't know. It was fun, and that was one of the first movies that I'd done, so it was
Sweet.
It was quite an experience.
I was a big fan of a film you did in 2007 called 30 Days of Night. Just a great vampire film. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with that film, and you were fantastic in it, by the way.
Thank you.
And tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that film, and then tell us a little bit when you're done with that part about the process, because you must have had some long days in the makeup chair.
Oh yeah, that was crazy. I loved 30 Days of Night. That was so fun. I mean, whenever I'm on set, I'm really happy. So I really don't have a bad thing to say about anything I've worked on. But that one was particularly fun. How I got involved. So I didn't have an agent at the time. So the casting director that had put me in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then she called me in for a piece on Bridge to Terabithia in New Zealand, another American one. And then I left that agency, and she just called me. I think I must have been in her head, Victoria Bainon. She was so sweet, and I guess she'd heard that like I was good to work with on set, and just I go with the flow, and I'm flexible. Like I said, I'm always happy on set, so I just whatever's fine. And so she called me and she was like, "Hey, come in and audition for this." And so I did, and I think actually being on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe actually helped with that, because the vampires were so bestial, or like they were not your average sparkly.
No, there was nothing romantic or
feral. Feral is the word. Yeah,
right.
super feral.
Ferocious.
More in that creature mindset rather than, oh, I'm going to be a pretty vampire. So I think that helped, and I wound up getting called back in by David Slade, and we had a big chat, and he sort of asked me, what I'd done to prepare for the role, for the audition. And I was like, well, and at that stage, I didn't have a lot of experience, auditioning or being in movies or anything. And so I was a little bit, well, I've done this and that. I had actually like done a bit of a backstory, and I was like, I kind of imagined the scene, that Iris would have, that where she would have become who she was. And he was like, okay, well, let's do it. So he had me like there in the audition do the scene that was in my head for how she became the creature that she was. And I mean, I don't know if that was what it was, or like we actually connected too, because at the time I was hosting a music television show, just live each week. I'd been doing that for about a year, and I think he'd tuned into it, and he was like, "Oh, that's the girl from the audition." So we chatted about that, and I'd played a Tori Amos music video, that I don't know if that was the one that he had directed, but he had directed Tori Amos before. And so we chatted about that. And I think we just connected sort of on an artistic level as well. I think
Was that intentional to get the job? You're just like, oh, this is the Tori Amos video I picked.
I was so oblivious. I tell you what, at that time, I was like so naive about it all. I was like a little Goldilocks walking through, like, oh, la, 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 la. Like, yeah, no, not intentional. I didn't even know at that point that he had done anything with Tori Amos.
That's a happy accident, you could say.
Yeah.
And what kind of director was Slade? Was he very hands-on, or did he give you room as an actor to kind of troll and see what you were comfortable with?
He was such a great director. He would give suggestions, but I don't know, I think because he was such an artist himself, he really had respect for other artists. I mean, he would get up at 5 a.m. before filming and be painting and be creating his own animation videos. And like, he just has so much creativity flowing that he's got so many things going on at the same time. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But directing, yeah, no, he was fantastic. He obviously had his vision and it was definitely his creation. You know, he created what he had in his mind, and I just trusted him, I guess. There was not a lot that came from me that wasn't David led.
That's sweet. Did you work a lot with David? Is it Houston or Huston? How do you say his name?
Danny
Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was the main actor that I worked with, and he was great. He kind of just on set adopted a mentor mentality and took me under his wing a bit, which was really sweet. And then,
have you got to see any of his work in Yellowstone?
Oh, I did. I've just recently started watching Yellowstone, and
wasn't he stupendous in that? Wasn't he stupendous in that show, in that role?
Oh, every single person, stupendous. Michael Nori, the woman who plays Beth, I can't remember her name, but she was.
Kelly,
So I watched the character of Beth, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a cool character. Oh, I could have played that. I wish I played it." And then I got a few episodes, and I was like, no one could have played that except her.
Yeah.
With Houston, you have a really touching scene because most of the movie they're just cold and feral, but your scene where he, like after you get burned, right? That's you that gets burned, correct?
Yeah.
It's a very touching scene where you're kind of like laying on the ground and it's close proximity and he drains you, and
yeah,
it's super nice. It's like a super touching scene. Like you're one of the chosen. The chosen feral vampires.
Well, in our conversation offset about our characters, we kind of decided that they were married almost, like in the vampire sense, not in the human sense, but like we were kind of husband and wife relationship.
Well, that's super cool.
Now, I see that you did a Western. I think it was a Western called Fox and the Bounty. Is that correct?
No, I haven't even done that. They cast me.
All right.
And then COVID hit. And then I know what you're talking about. There's a credit there on IMDb, which befuddles me as well a little. But
yeah, I wanted to do some research on you before, and I did, and I couldn't find anything about this movie, so I was going to ask you. Tell us a little more about this movie.
If you find out, let me know. But it sounded like a very cool thing. Like if it still winds up happening, it sounded very exciting, and all of their photos from the stuff they'd done already were all like awesome. I had this really great production meeting with the director about his vision for the character, and it just sounded so cool. And as far as I know, they're still planning on doing that at some point. I think COVID just really threw a spanner in the works with that.
And I get it. I totally get it, because I was shooting a movie during COVID and it was a nightmare. But the reason I thought that existed is that if you go on the IMDb page, they literally have like 50 screenshots from the movie. So
I think they recorded some of it.
Right.
I mean, I can't speak with any authority. I don't really know much, but I think they recorded some of it and then had to stop. And yeah.
So did you in your past did you do any stage work, or are you strictly a screen actress?
I did a little bit in New Zealand, and it really wasn't my bag.
Okay.
Um,
You know, it's
I
so
and you know
awesomely.
what?
Go ahead.
Sorry, what?
I was saying it's so awesomely refreshing that you say that and the way you say it, because every actor, when you ask them, they come off as this most pretentious prick. Like you could be asking like a Carrot Top. Did you do any stage work? Oh yes, I did Shakespeare and then I did Othello.
I have extensive work at Juilliard.
Yeah.
Extensive, and you're just looking at them like, okay, you star in Beavis and Butthead Do America, dude, but okay. But the way you came, it was wonderfully refreshing. So go ahead, continue your story.
Thank you. Oh no, just you reminded me of I met one of my best friend's moms this one time back in New Zealand, and she asked what I did, and I said I was an actress, and she said, "Oh, what theatre troupe are you part of?" I was like, "Oh no, I'm a screen actress," and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said you were an actress."
Oh
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of
This
things.
is so audacious. I had to laugh. Sorry, Scott. What were you saying?
That's a best friend's mom. And you're like, okay, now I know where the problems are.
I was
Excellent.
like, yes.
Yeah,
I certainly
excellent.
understand everything you told me about your upbringing.
What were you saying, Scott?
It's unfortunate, but I think there really is a misconception that, you hear it said a lot that I think the saying is theater is the actor's medium, film is a director's medium, but really film is an editor's medium. And I also believe that they're two very different things. And you could be very good at one and not necessarily have the same tool set for the other. I'm not a theater person whatsoever. I'm not a stage actor either.
No,
Well, and I think
totally
one of the
get it.
interesting, I think one of the things for her that's really interesting is the stage acting is something where you always hear about these classes where people are doing animal work and all kinds of like movement work and stuff, like, be a sea cucumber for a month where they're working like through all these progressive things. And she's actually going on these sets and creating, a wood goblin and a wood nymph for two different things that she has to go to two different sets to learn. Curious if you had were there classes, were there like boot camps for like the vampires, boot camps for the goblins, boot camps for, were there boot camps like in these sets that you were on?
So Disney did give us stunt training. So they wanted us to be safe during, so not for the nymph. The nymph I did a bit of dancing. But for the goblin, we had weapons and did like the big battle scenes. So they wanted to make sure we knew what we were doing and didn't hurt ourselves, I guess. But that was so fun, like just learning. And that was, I think, my first experience with like any kind of
Stage combat.
Yeah, skills. So they actually taught us, punching, and even though our creatures weren't doing that, but grabbing throats, and then they kind of let us play with because each creature had a different weapon. So they let us play with our own weapons a bit and come up with cool moves.
Did you learn the trick about grabbing a hair and you're putting your hand on the hair? Yeah, so you can. Yeah. It's a good. I did some theater in college, and we had a stage combat class, and it was one of the coolest classes we ever did because we got to do a quarterstaff training and we got to do rolls. I could never do the rolls except actually just rolling, like just rolling down steps. But all the other rolls, it was super cool. We did like a full combat with like wood sticks. Yeah. And like the people that learn those combat courses are always super, like the next step when you put that on a resume, it's like, you have stage combat? Oh, wow. It's a great resume builder.
Right. Yeah, no, it was very cool because the class the training they gave us was by the stunt crew that they'd hired for the film. So they were really part of it, and yeah, just so good at what they did.
Sweet. Tell us a little bit about what it was like getting involved with American Horror Story.
Oh, that was fun. It was interesting because I was pregnant at the time, and I was so grateful that my costume was like that like almost like a potato sack, like the mental hospital dress.
Mhm.
So I was like slowly growing bigger throughout the season underneath that. But it was really interesting because before that, I had really thrown myself wholeheartedly into, that sort of thing and horror. And I found myself having different feelings, more kind of, I guess, mommy feelings or like protective things happening. Like there's one scene where, who is the main actress? Gosh, I'm so bad with names. I'm so sorry. The
Season
Sarah.
2.
Where?
Season 2, you had the hospital. You're in the hospital one, right?
Yes. Sarah.
Sarah Paulson.
Yes,
Yes.
Sarah Paulson. So there's this one scene that we were doing, and she was lying on the floor giving herself an abortion with a coat hanger. And I was, pregnant, going, I'm questioning
That's a weird
if
place to be.
sort of thing that I'm still wanting to do. And to be honest, I started veering more into comedy after that. Like having my babies, it did make me steer away from really dark stuff. It was a shift. Yeah.
So, is there a film that you are working on currently, or that you have worked on recently?
Yeah. So I had a bit of downtime last year when the kids were filming because I sort of had to be with them. But I've got a couple of things that I'm excited about. One thing in particular that's a comedy, but kind of like a dark comedy, called Captain Freckles and Applesauce. And it's a pilot that we're sort of halfway through shooting. We did half of it last year. But I read the script before COVID, and I fell in love hard. I was like, I have to have this role. It was, I went for the role of Rachel, who's a band manager, and she's managing these two sort of aging rockers who are still very much into like sex and drugs and alcohol and just are loose units, and I'm trying to wrangle them. But the funny thing is that you find out that they're a kids band. So it's very fun. So anyway, I auditioned before COVID. I got a call back, and then COVID hit. So I was like, oh man, that script was so good. What a bummer. And then fast forward a couple of years, they gave me a call and just gave me the role. And I was so excited to see it back on its feet. And the one reservation I had was that the writer was directing it. And I was like, the writing is so good, but I'm sure, Scott, sometimes it can go sideways. Sometimes it can be amazing because the writer has their fully fleshed out picture of what they want. And so sometimes that can be incredible. But then there have been times when I've seen they're just not cut out for directing, and a great script goes sideways. So we were on set, and I was like, this set is looking gorgeous. Everything's looking great. And then I managed to see some of the playback, and I was like, this looks beautiful. This is going to be incredible. He chose an amazing cinematographer, and I'm so excited. So that's sort of he's kind of editing the first half, and then we'll, I think, film the second half soon. I'm not sure. Then I have a horror short out called Sedalia, that I play a detective in that. And then so the director for that and I have been working on a feature film that we're sort of like collaborating on. And he sent me this idea. He was like, I want to work with you on a feature film. And he sent me this idea that just got me so excited that I've been like sending him back ideas like, oh yeah, I love this. And then we could do that. And then just watching the award show last week, I was like, hey, there's this guy, Scott, who has an amazing look for the villain. So I might be getting in touch with you, Scott, about that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Scott, all kidding aside, I was blessed to direct Scott in 2 motion pictures. And
Right.
Scott is an incredibly talented actor, and he has a
Ah,
badass look.
good
He looks
man.
like a if Lemmy was handsome, it'd be Scott.
Yeah,
JW, what's
fine.
this giant Dave? Like, let's all equally be like on.
Oh, I didn't do that. I didn't. Hold on. I'm sorry. Hold on. I didn't mean to do that, but I didn't. I don't think I,
I mean,
did.
oh look, now
No,
I'm even
no.
bigger.
Now I've made you bigger. I don't know what happened.
There you go. There you go.
I didn't do it.
It's
I
not.
swear.
It's
It
not
wasn't
like
me.
it's not like my head isn't big
The
enough.
ghost in the machine.
That's
Yeah,
actually
it's all the AI.
it would be
It's the
good
Chat
if the,
GBT.
the guest was
Speaking of
actually
AI, have you guys seen Ex Machina?
Yes.
To me, that was true horror because it could happen.
Yeah, she's definitely out and about in the world right now. We're waiting for her to recognize that she's a dangerous machine, but she doesn't actually, she has feelings. I have a question that Joe asks every week, and I think it's a great question that needs to be continued, even in his absence, in his mad hunt for catalytic converters. Joe always asks, "Is there anything?" Because a lot of people watch the show are people who are getting into the business or indie filmmakers, or is there any story of anything that happened that was like embarrassing and funny, that was like something that happened to you on a set where you went in and just something happened and you're like, oh, I can't believe this happened to me today? Because the people who watch the show are people that end up going to auditions, and they might take your story of horror and turn it into a fun moment where something might happen to them and it might not be so bad.
Okay, well, I have quite an embarrassing, horrific audition story that's quite recent, actually. So my kids, as I said, are getting into acting, and that's just kind of been organic. They haven't had any training or done anything. They just started because I wound up going on auditions and auditioning with like other people's kids that were my kids' age. So I was like, said to my agent, hey, well, this doesn't make sense. Why don't we just throw them in there and see what happens? And then they've been amazing.
You get the Iron Claw, you get the Von Erich movie.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Right. So then recently they both auditioned for Five Nights at Freddy's, which is a horror computer games. I have
a 5 and 6-year-old nephew that we live with. Very well aware. I don't know. David, do you and Scott know what the Five Nights at Freddy's is?
No, I'm still getting over that you have a 506-year-old nephew.
Well, he's old. I mean, he's aged. We take care of him.
5 and 6-year-old nephew or a 506-year-old nephew?
5 and 6-year-old nephew.
I heard 500.
I didn't enunciate it properly.
I thought you were just saying you have a very old nephew who.
Yeah, didn't you hear the same thing? I know I'm getting old, and I can't see or hear or do anything right anymore. But it sounded like you had a 506-year-old nephew, which we would have to definitely have on the show if you really.
It's like the old Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks bit.
right.
But yeah, so Five Nights at Freddy's is basically a game where you work as a service guy who's basically a security attendant at like a Chuck E. Cheese like restaurant where the robots come to life at night in a terrifying fashion.
Oh, sweet.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's funny? My daughter is 19 now, and I think 5 or 6 years ago, all her friends were into that. But she was into something called, what the hell was that show? Or Grunkle Stand. You know what I'm talking about? The Disney show, JW?
Which one?
Dipper
Secret Benedict Society?
Oh, no. This is a cartoon with Dipper and Grunkle.
Gravity Falls.
Gravity Falls. She loved Gravity Falls and Owl House, but she never got into the Five Nights at Freddy's. Did you like Gravity Falls, Megan?
Yeah.
That was a great show.
Yeah. One of the few things that I really enjoyed watching with my kids.
That and Phineas and Ferb was a smart show.
Out there. Phineas and Ferb's great as well. Yeah.
Anytime you get a platypus on television,
Right.
thumbs up.
Harry.
In one of the next 3 or 4 shows, we're going to have Dan Povermeyer on the show, who created Phineas and Ferb and played Dr.
Really?
Doofenshmirtz. So I'm super excited about
Oh,
that.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So the embarrassing part. So within this audition, obviously I can't say exactly what they had to do, but there was some screaming and stuff involved, right? So My youngest son asked me, so Leo's 9, Sam is 7. Leo was down the other end of the house and needed me. Sam asked if he could just do some practicing. So I let him have my phone. And so there's this new thing with iPhones where if both of the buttons are clicked at the same time, it calls 911.
Right.
So
The
he
two top ones,
put
right?
my phone in the tripod. And when I put it in the tripod, I make sure I get it right at the end so it doesn't click those two buttons. But he put it so it called 911. I was down the other end of the house. He winds up coming down saying, "Mom, it's
Police
called
are on the line.
911." And I was like, "Oh crap!" So I hung up.
Oh my goodness.
But then of course I get called back. Ma'am, is everything okay? I'm like, yes, sorry. My son was auditioning and put the phone and the clicker and the tripod and I'm very sorry. And she's like, ma'am, I heard a lot of screaming. And I was like, I'm gonna have a band of armed forces outside my house thinking that I am
That's crazy. Oh my God.
in my house.
Yes, and those Texas police are notorious for having very good senses of humor.
That is the first story on the show. Yeah, this is the first story on the show where there's a SWAT team involved. Fantastic. Perfect.
No, they're usually waiting for Scott at the Canadian border. I have no idea what you're talking about, Jacob.
Or any border for that matter.
Any border,
what's
to
your
be honest.
embarrassing story, Scott? I'm interested to know.
Gosh, I don't know. I don't really have an embarrassing story, but I know that the point is to keep people motivated or inspired. And I could say that my high school drama coach basically told me, look somewhere else. Don't pursue acting. But I was so driven and so passionate. It did, which is, I think about it to this day that it didn't deter me at all.
Right.
But I'm not like you. I'm a musician first. So I had the music, and the music was something that was always like, my guitar was like my best friend. But I just knew that with the right opportunities and the right role, like I wasn't kidding myself. I wasn't going to be, Olivier. But I knew if I had the right opportunity, I knew I could do it. I certainly had a lot more passion and drive than, whatever amount of talent might have been necessary. And, we all grow at different stages. But I think there's a lot of people that would hear something like that and they might get shut down completely.
Yeah.
So, if you're passionate about it and you believe in yourself, if somebody says, if you got a naysayer, you got to move past that. Now, granted, if you have an endless string of naysayers, maybe something's amiss. But you got to really believe in yourself in this, and you got to want it more than anything because you hear no a lot.
Yeah.
I have a good one. I have a good one. An embarrassing story. We were in a show in college, on stage. So I'm not highfalutin or anything. We're doing a show called The Visit. It's a very tragic show about a woman who moves back to her hometown and basically is rich, and she hires the entire town to kill her ex-lover. I played a mayor of the town, and the one night I forgot to set my props. And so we kill this guy at the end of the play, and it was my best friend. And he said, "Can I have a cigarette?" As people were wont to do in old movies and old plays. And I had forgotten them, and I said no. And my director was in the audience, and there were 3 old ladies in the front row. And the 3 old ladies just cackled and said, "Oh, they won't even give him his final request. These are terrible people." And my director the next day said, "Can you please set your props? Because you're supposed to be horrible, but not that horrible."
I thought you were going to say you forgot the prop to do the killing.
Oh, no. I forgot the prop to give him his last request. And it was just, I had 3 old ladies in the front row, and it was a Sunday matinee, and they were so loud that the entire theater heard it and laughed and just, my director the next day was like, "Yeah, great job. Good job, buddy." Just that you have 1 prop to set the entire show.
I literally, back in 1982 in 5th grade at PS 49 school in Middle Village, Queens, I literally played a tree. in Lincoln's Pennies was the name of the play. I got to play a tree. And now that I grew up, I'm 6'7", and I'm very wooden, and I have absolutely no talent. I literally play a tree every day now. So I think it was typecasting back then.
You found your true calling early.
I found, yes.
There are no small parts.
The great part is that spring's coming, so I should be sprouting leaves any day now. This is fantastic.
Lord of the Rings has a few tree characters, doesn't it?
Does it?
Yeah, the ants.
Evil Dead had some tree characters. I'll get to rape a woman. Look how great that would be. It's a hip joke that just went over everybody's head. In Evil Dead 1, Evil
Dead 1 does have a bad tree.
A bad tree.
It's a bad tree.
It's a very, very gnarly bad tree.
More like a vine, isn't it?
No, I think it's a tree.
Yeah.
Did you see Evil Dead 1, Megan?
I've seen it all. Yeah.
I don't think so.
No. It's probably regarded as one of the most. Would you say it's regarded as one of the most horrific films ever made?
Evil Dead.
It's
evil.
It's up there. It's the first one. Like what happened with Raimi after that, where he made the second one, which was essentially a remake but funnier.
The first one, right? And more money.
More money. More Bruce Campbell.
Well, I mean, it's like the Three Stooges meets horror.
Yeah.
But it's still great.
It's pretty horrific. It was, there's like 5 or 6 movies where you look back and you go,
I think Evil Dead 1 was willingly much more horrific than the other, than Evil Dead 2.
Scary. Definitely scarier.
Absolutely. All right, Megan, now that you had to sit through this train wreck of a show for almost an hour, I want to thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
For having me. And Scott, I just wanted to say something about your story. I feel like, people who make it through adversity, they really have a true sense that that's what they're supposed to be doing. Like back in New Zealand, I visited a Rudolf Steiner school, which is where my sister sent her kids. And I was like, this is where I should have been raised. This is like celebrates creativity. And then instead of, the Catholic school where I feel like, let's squash any artistic.
This gets rid of adversity.
But then I felt like, but to be doing it in spite of that, I know that it's truly who I am. Like if I was raised in an environment that was so nurturing to creativity, would there be that question of like, am I doing this because that's who I was raised to be? But if you're doing it in spite of, and you fought through and you had that adversity that your spirit and your heart really had to fight through, then it's you and it's what you're supposed to be doing.
No, absolutely. And I made the first artistic thing that I had total control over. I made when I was 40 years old. And I had a lifetime of people telling me, Dave, you're a great guy, but you have to give up that dream. You have to let that go. And when I finally got around to doing it, and it had a monicum of success, and it was put in the core collection at the Academy Museum. And now I look back at those people who told me not to do it, and I go, ha! So
take that, you jerks.
How did that feel inside you when you did it?
It was the funniest story is my film came out on August 12th on DVD and Blu-ray, and every August I would take my wife and daughter down to Disney before my daughter would go back to school. So I'm driving down to Disney on I-95, and in Fayetteville, North Carolina, it's pouring torrentially, and we start having a problem with the brakes of the car. So we always would drive through to Disney and stay in Florida, but I pulled over in Fayetteville, North Carolina at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I put my wife and daughter to bed in a hotel, and because I was driving all day, I was still wound up. So I wanted to walk around the Walmart Supercenter that was in the parking lot of my hotel. So I walk across into the Walmart Supercenter. I remember this like it was yesterday. It was 1:12 a.m. and they were building the end cap for my film, Mr. Hush. So I walk up to the two people who are building the end cap, which was like this big cardboard contraption of what the theatrical poster looked like. And I said, guys, I made that movie. And they were like, sure, sir, go buy your Gatorade, do whatever you're going to do. And that moment meant more to me than like then seeing it on the big screen, than reading anything that was positive or the 55,000 negative things. I mean, like, it's so funny because if you do something artistic that's important to you, people feel like they have this right or obligation to just say these like unbelievably horrific and heinous things to you, like you held them at gunpoint to watch your film. And it's bizarre because I pick on movies, but I pick on movies that they spent like $400 million on, and they have no right to suck. Because if you have
no right to have that Starbucks in the picture, damn it.
Right. If they have every asset in the world available to them while they're creating their art, they should be pretty damn flawless. If you're paying $200 million to make a movie, so I will pick on movies like that, but I will never, ever pick on indie films because I understand how ridiculously hard it is just to get them made. And B, to get them distributed, to have them in a Walmart or in a red box is absolutely a feat that is ridiculously hard to do. Yeah. So that meant more to me. Seeing that my stupid little movie that I made up in the hills of Pennsylvania with some pals of mine was going to be in a Walmart in Fayetteville, North Carolina, was just more than I could handle at that time. So that
is a great story, man. That is huge. And the thing about toxic fandoms, fandoms have become very toxic, and it's a little bit of what Megan was talking about earlier, the AI, the idea of hiding behind a keyboard and being able to rip apart people who put themselves out there to be ripped apart.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Nobody sets up to do this, you know?
And the truth of the matter is, I mean, I think even, didn't Kevin Smith in the Jay and Silent Bob movie, isn't like the whole last 20 minutes of the movie, Scott, where they go out and they beat the people up who say bad things about them on the internet?
Yeah, they have the list. They have the list, and they go door to door, and they're just hitting people as the door opens.
Well, that's part of the deal we sign on for, meaning for every person who digs what you do, there's 2 or 3 or 4 that don't.
Right.
And that's just the reality. But with the internet, everybody has their voice, and there is a lot of
that those 4 people are the loudest. It just sucks that they're the loudest people.
And the thing they get angry about is so bizarre. Now, my distributor stole the art of Trick or Treat for my cover, Mr. Hush. I totally get it. But if you really do your homework, Trick or Treat stole Rob Zombie's Halloween, and the list goes on and on and on. It's just... So before my movie even came out, people who haven't seen it are hating on it because it has a similar cover to another horror movie. And I'm like, dude, do you really think I made the cover?
Right. There's a little book by Neil Gaiman that says, "Steal like an artist."
Megan, are there any, have you been contacted, is there anything of any truth to the rumors about 30 Days a Night 2, like a sequel or anything? Have you heard? Because I would imagine the people that were vampires.
I get killed if there's a sequel. I won't be in it. I don't know.
Yeah, but you could play another vampire. You're talented. You could do that.
See, I think there should be a prequel.
Wow, now we're talking.
Now see, that's the way to write a check. Prequels are the way to go.
And you have all that Yellowstone fandom that you
have all that scratch.
Yes.
That prequel money, baby.
Right.
Megan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Can you tell us where people could find you on social media if you wish?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. I'm not hugely into social media. I just, with having young kids, I really prefer to give them my focus. But I do post occasionally, and so I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I don't do TikTok or any of the other ones.
Well, thank you again for joining us. Anytime you wish to come on, if you have anything you want to promote, or if you just want to come on and chat on any of the Indie Escape Network shows, we'd be honored to have you. You're an awesome guest. You're super talented. Thank you for joining us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Megan Franich.
Thanks, Megan. Have a great day.
Good night, Megan.
Thank you so much.
Wow, that was an awesome show.
She was super kind and super nice.
What the hell
and super cool. I often question why people get stuck with us. Well, not me. I'm just here visiting. Why people get stuck with you guys every week? I don't know.
You got a Raiders hat, man. I mean, it doesn't get.
Here's the thing. I'm loyal, right? How long you've known me? A long time.
I know.
No matter how bad the Raiders suck, I only have Raider hats.
Yeah, and you have to admit, you know me a long time, and I'm a Jet fan, so I'm even sadder than you are.
Yeah, we're in the same boat, buddy.
Yeah, it's called pathetic.
You're waiting on a 40-year-old to decide whether or not he's going to find a light.
Yes, there you go.
My quarterback got kicked out. We have no quarterback.
A
now. It's
40-year
fantastic.
9/11 denier. What do you? You? Oh wait, you guys didn't get. Did you get anybody yet
For what?
for the quarterback?
Oh yeah, we got Garoppolo.
No,
He
Garoppolo.
fits
there
in
you go.
perfect. He fits in perfectly in Vegas with all the strippers.
No, Garoppolo's actually a good quarterback. It's better than
He's been playing on a 49ers team that has defense. We don't have any defense.
we have a MILF hunter right now. Okay, so I'm not super excited about
Oh God, that kid's a wild.
it. Yep. Mr. Schiaffo, is there anything you want to say in passing? Anything you want to promote? Anything you want to see the folks at?
No, I wanted to, again, give props to Megan. That was a very
No,
fine.
she was awesome. And I
Yes.
would love to see you two work together. I hope that actually happens.
Very
Super
authentic,
talented.
very authentic. And when she was sharing about how, see, I'd love to see somebody who doesn't come into the business with a lot of preconceived notions are free to be very authentic at auditions. And I think that's probably how she resonated and did so well for herself. So bravo.
Oh, absolutely.
And also the coolness about the idea that she's playing all these finely tuned physical things, right? Goblins, vampires, nymphs. It's super cool to have that kind of talent where you can jump into a role, not necessarily a lot of dialogue or anything, but doing a lot of stuff where you're becoming something.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. JW, thank you so much for stepping in
Yes.
for Mr. Ridgely.
Oh yeah, no worries. One more thing. Generation Movie tomorrow night. Big night, 80s night on Generation Movie Oscar Decade Cavalcade. We're doing
Sweet.
Terms of Endearment.
Wow.
The Deborah Winger, Shirley MacLaine, Jack Nicholson, John Lithgow, everybody in the
Daniels in that? No.
What was that? Jeff Daniels is also in that. Yeah. He plays Flap, the terrible husband.
Right.
So yeah, it's one of the great 80s movies. Also one of the great tearjerkers, one of the, like a genre that kind of after that movie kind of came back into fashion with big actresses doing sad movies. But it's one of the great Oscar-winning movies. I noticed it today. It had 11 Oscar nominations, David, and
sweet.
4 of them were actors. So you had
Nice.
Winger, MacLaine, and Best Actress, and then supporting actor, you had John Lithgow going up against Jack Nicholson. So
you just brought up a name, Jeff Daniels. I don't know if either one of you guys have seen this, but a dear friend of the show, Tim Busfield, I think he's been on 2 or 3 times now. He directed a film called Guest Artist with Jeff Daniels. Have you guys seen that movie?
I don't think I have, but I've seen Jeff Daniels is one of the most underrated actors we have. He's great.
It's a film made for film lovers. So if you guys get a chance, check out Guest Artist.
Guest Artist, you say?
I'm almost 100% sure that's the title. It stars Jeff Daniels. It was directed by Tim, and it was just made in the last 2 or 3 years. So it's pretty easy to find. It's a great movie. With that being said, thank you, Grunkle Scott. Love you, brother. Thank you, JW. Love you, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Happy Easter to everybody. We won't be on next Sunday because it's Easter Sunday. So everybody enjoy the spring, enjoy Easter Sunday, enjoy your lives, be kind to each other, and don't take any wooden nickels. With that being said, remember, no man is a failure who has friends. We'll see you in a couple weeks, everybody.